This is Peter,
And this is Tom.
and you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to our podcast. All right, Tom, what do we got?
Well, today we're going to kind of branch off a little bit from the history, looking more pop culture. We're still going to do the history of this, but we're going to examine social effects, or just as a whole. I'm just going to make it simple. We're going to be talking about zombies today.
Yes,
we're talking about zombies, where they come from, how they affected pop culture, how they became this like phenomenon. Because I remember, they've always been around or been around for a long time, but I say the last couple of years or so is really when things took off. Walking Dead, World War Z, things like that. So we're just going to talk really just about zombies as a whole and why people actually want there to be a zombie apocalypse.
Right. If you really think about zombies, I mean, that has a really sad story as to why there's zombie. I think the idea of a zombie exists, and we're going to get into that. And as you mentioned, we'll talk about kind of the history of zombies, and then we'll from there get into whether it's possible to even really for zombies to exist, and then we'll talk about the pop culture, really starting with 1930s movies. We'll kind of go forward. We'll talk about a revival of it in the 60s and 70s. Then we'll talk about the dip. And then again, the new revival in early 2000s. And then a slight dip. And then a revival.
We talk about some confirmed zombie attacks.
Right. Because that's a thing. This used to be your thing. Right? Zombies used to be a thing.
Right? I guess, right before my kids, I was really into zombies and the whole zombie lore. Well, I don't say my thing. I guess got really...
You Googled it a little bit more than other things.
A lot of the books, and stuff like that. I think we made a couple zombie movies and stuff like that, just messing around, but stuff like that. But yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of new to this whole zombie thing. I mean, really, just Walking Dead, and not even this show. I tried watching this show years ago. I put it on at night. I watched like 2 episodes. I was by myself, and I'm like, this is freaky. I don't want to watch this. So I guess I'm a wuss when it comes to that. But I have been reading all the graphic novels, and I can proudly say that I am like almost done. Like tomorrow, probably will be done with the entire series of Walking Dead, and that's a lot of reading. By the way, great comic books. Just throwing it out there. Now zombies are on like Disney. Like my kids watch a show called Zombies.
I think that's like a movie, right?
Yeah, it's like 2 movies for 2 made-for-TV movies.
Well, that's what Disney's known to do. They take historical tragedies and turn them into fairy tales for children. If you kind of look at their history.
Great. Okay, so the zombies as we know it, like where do zombies come from?
Well, there's a whole bunch of ideas with this, right? And where they come from and stuff like that. But actually, if you go back in history, there's a lot of the origins is being actually credited to a lot of things, which is ancient Greeks. They were kind of one of these first ones, civilizations that were talking about fear of the undead. Mm-hmm. Right? They had a lot of archaeologists unearthed a lot of like graves, which contain skeletons pinned down by rocks, other heavy objects, as presumably because they wanted to prevent the dead from reanimating. But it wasn't really like zombies, right? The folklore about zombies actually comes around from Haiti. Yep. Right? I think in the 17th century, you had West African slaves were brought into work on Haitian sugar plantations, and the brutal conditions left the slaves longing for freedom. So, according to some reports, that basically they were looking for their afterlife. And that the zombie kind of represented the horrific life that they had.
Yeah, it was a fear. Like being a zombie was a fear of a continuation of slavery after death. Exactly what you're saying. And it stems from West African languages. So Nzumbi, which is Ndzumbi, Nzumbi, means corpse, Mitsogo language. And then zombie, but with an N, Nzambi means spirit of the dead person in the Congo language. So West Africa is where most of these slaves were captured and brought over to the New World. And specifically when they were brought to Haiti, as you said, they had to work on these terrible plantations. Because it was a French colony, they were forced to convert to being Catholic. And, a lot of these slaves brought with them their Western African cultures and religions. So you had this like mix of all kinds of religions, while the French law still required them to become Catholic. And this leads to a birth of a new mixed religion in Haiti, which we know as voodoo. Technically, as you mentioned, zombie becomes a thing in Haiti because of the fact that it's just such brutal conditions for these slaves that a lot of these slaves would ultimately want to just end life. Like they didn't want to go on anymore. So there was this idea of, let's just commit suicide. However, committing suicide, there was a fear apparently that if you commit suicide, you do not go to a good afterlife. And if you commit suicide, you can somehow become the undead or a zombie, or in other words, become a slave for the rest of your life. So it like further enslaved you in your condition because you felt like you had no way out. Because if you killed yourself, you might become a zombie. It's the worst nightmare, right? You become your when you're
Well, you basically become mindless, and then in the voodoo religion, although they don't believe there's actually zombies, like when we get to the pop culture zombies, there's also the idea of that they using a combination of neurotoxins and stuff like that. I'm not
yep
going to get super into it. They're able to use these, and they know how to give like certain doses. They can create what we would call
yeah from
today zombie-like symptoms, right? Like
yep
difficulty walking, confusion, respiratory problems. High doses can actually put someone in a paralysis and a coma where it will appear that they're actually dead and buried alive, and then later on they'll be revived. Basically, the toxins wear off and they wake up. And there has been actually cases of this reported in medical journals where people got this sort of paralysis, and they were later revived from the grave. People actually go and dig them up later on, and they would be
yep
alive, brought back.
and that stems from like this Bokors.
Bokor, yeah.
Yeah, Bokor. It's
Bokor,
like a voodoo. Bokor sounds better. A voodoo practitioner, and these herb shell. I think it comes from a pufferfish, right? They use a
yeah,
neurotoxin
pufferfish. Yeah.
found in pufferfish. Um, and you're right. It basically causes zombie-like symptoms. Like you could difficulty walking, mental confusion. All these issues. But and then they use different toxins to kind of wake you up. There's a guy that did a whole study on this. However, like after he did the study, this was I want to say this was in the 80s. The guy's name was Wade Davis. That's why I was there. So he was a Harvard scientist, and he basically met this Haitian man in the 1980s, and man claimed to have escaped the sugar plantation after being like forced to work there for 2 years as basically a zombie. And he said he was given these drugs that you just mentioned, and it turned him into this like zombie state. And he followed instructions without brain's analytical interference. So this Wade Davis scientist that met him was like, all right, let's figure this out. Again, this is 80s. It's not that long ago. He looked into the zombie powder from this Bokor, and consisted of neurotoxin found in pufferfish, and when ingested, it would put a person in like a death-like state. So they would revive the victim with a second poison made from datura plant, right?
Yeah.
Which is basically like because it's also known as zombie cucumber that animated their bodies but kept them subservient. So this guy Davis did this like detailed research on these toxins. However, the scientific society did not approve of his study and basically said that even though it's possible these poisons that he looked at to do that to put you in this like weird animated state, they believe that would be the amount of poison would be inadequate to put humans into a zombie-like state before killing them if you add more of that poison. So even though there was an actual scientific study about is it possible to turn people into zombies, it was discredited in 1980s. Nonetheless,
So
right?
be it. Yeah. Well, that's just kind
So
of like the background of it. It has been there's been a couple of documented people buried in a grave, like we said, and come back 3-4 days later, like, hey, what happened? Like, I don't know, why'd you guys bury me? They're like, oh, you're alive. And because again, they could have eaten something, one of those
that had
plants,
those, yep.
and something happened. So there's just a few medical documentation of this actually taking place.
Yeah. And then let's and also like there's the idea of a zombie coming to the Western world really does stem from Haiti as well.
Yeah, it comes from the Haiti,
Yeah,
yes,
and also
Haiti
when we
region.
talk about this idea, it was viewed as like almost like ignorant in a sense because and that was to discredit Haiti. There was a slave rebellion that eventually overthrows the slave masters in 1791. Haiti is reimagined; it's renamed into Saint Dominique. It's the first independent black republic, right? From that point forward, it is kind of viewed as a place of violence, superstition, death, and mainly because the very existence of Haiti as an independent black republic is offensive to European empires. So they feed off of this, like reports of cannibalism, human sacrifice, and these zombies, and the idea that these people believe in this afterlife, that they're not cultured. So it's initially viewed as a way to discredit blacks in Haiti. So then these stories kind of start to come in towards the United States after America occupies Haiti in 1915. Right, so these rumors of zombies kind of start to appear
Again, it's
in
all
the
just
United States.
folklore. This is the same thing
Absolutely.
as, and it would be the same thing. Like if you look in history, we can always talk about in the future, right? The whole idea like vampires and werewolves, like that was all that was a European version of this. This is
Yep.
kind of just like the Haitian version of some sort of folklore. Again, it's getting mingled in. It's being used by people for their own benefits. But it's that same idea. They're trying to explain their fears in other ways. Plus, back then, a lot of these times, in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, we're not getting to 19th century yet, but even that time, people were still like, they thought that, there are vampires out there, there's werewolves
Yep.
out there. So why couldn't corpses be reanimated? They already believed that was happening. So a zombie one is just another offshoot of that. There's nothing
And
changing.
yeah, but also like so, and you're right. Like some people believe that zombies were real, which is kind of what brings us to the first movie and first appearance of zombies in the movie. But do you ever see the image of Felicia Felix Mentor? She supposedly died in 1907, and then in like 1936, her picture was taken by this other white woman that was studying Haitian culture. And I mean, if you, I'm looking at a picture now. I mean, she looks a little zombie-ish, but they're saying that's clearly a myth. Nonetheless, some people went and started studying these zombies. Well, it's travel writer 1929 William Seabrook releases the first book on Haiti and talks about voodoo, calls it the Magic Island, and in it he starts talking about like these people that are undead and that they walk and actually exist, almost in that state of just like forever servitude. And that becomes the basis of the classic 1932 horror film called White Zombie. And which interesting, as the title suggests, right? This is about a white rather than an African zombie.
And that
Um,
was the first time I think zombie, the word zombie was used in like Western
yes.
movies. Well, like, yeah, like that's when you're seeing it for the first time actually being called that. Before that, a lot of time they were called ghouls or spirits,
Hmm.
reanimated corpses, whatever. But yeah, that's the first time you're seeing things like use zombie. A lot of people in the country first heard the term zombie at that point,
Yep. With
basically.
this movie, 1932, and it's essentially about a young couple that kind of gets talked into getting married on this Haitian plantation by the owner, and then he like secretly plots to seduce the bride, but at the end he like teams up with someone, and then they give the zombie potion to the girl, and basically this is your zombie movie. And after that, zombies again now it becomes kind of like a term in Western culture, stemming from Haitian, Haitian culture, voodoo culture, but now it's introduced to the realm of
Well, pop
pop
culture,
culture.
horror. Well, they're thrown in the same thing as like Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman.
Yeah.
They're kind of thrown into that whole monster lore.
Although now they say
And
that there's so many zombie movies that have been made that it's its
oh yeah,
own separate
it's its
genre.
own thing. Yeah, if you just Google zombie movies, I mean,
It's
forget
no
about the ones
longer
that
a
actually
horror
come
movie.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's well, the zombie apocalypse is this whole thing, which we'll get to.
Yeah, let's jump into it. Like, let's I mean the first movie that
Yeah,
really
1968. Well, White Zombie. I never saw White Zombie. No.
No, I've never saw White Zombie, no.
1968. Night of the
Yep.
Living Dead. I've seen. Yeah, the original. I've seen the original, which is actually has its own. It's a quite a huge cult following of their own. Night of the Living Dead by George Romero,
Yep.
and really in it, they never mention the word. They never say the word zombie.
Yep. That's what the fans started calling it.
It's the zombie. Yeah, they were called referred to as ghouls in the movie. But it was if you watch that movie even today, I mean, some of the special effects, okay, but like they're actually like they're eating like animal entrails, but it makes it look it's like a person and stuff like that. Like it's pretty
Ugh.
tense because it's
Ugh.
black and white. They did remake it, I believe, in the 70s, and
Well,
there's
he
been
made three
two.
movies total, right?
Yeah, he made direct spin-offs, which was Dawn of the Dead, which ever
Yep.
saw that one. That one's freaky, and Day of the Dead.
Yep.
Dawn of the Dead is more during like modern times, at the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. There's Night of the Living Dead. The zombies come, but they're actually get wiped out at the end, and
Yeah.
you have the whole thing. Kind of it's also talking about the racial
I was going
civil
to say
rights of
it's
the
like a
time too.
civil
Yeah.
rights aspect to it, right? Because the
Well, yeah,
main
at the very
protagonist
yeah.
is an African American, and they're saying
Yes.
this is like what it feels like in a civil rights movement. This was done in 1968, which is we did a whole podcast on
And if you want,
1968.
I'm not going to give it up, but you see the ending of the movie. There's like debate whether or not. Okay, well, the main protagonist is African American, and he survives the Night of the Living Dead, comes out of the basement, and then gets shot in the head
Spoiler,
by a sheriff.
spoiler.
Yeah,
Right.
spoiler, right? Gets shot in the head by the sheriff. And there's like debate: did the sheriff know the person was
Yeah, like that the
African
person was not
American
a
or
zombie.
not.
Yeah, like
Yeah, that
they
he
just
just
killed.
kill him because it was a black guy. So it was this whole, and that was kind of what Romero wanted to kind of like raise that narrative. And they remade the movie different times since then, with that ending being a little different at times. But yeah,
Man,
anyway,
you
Night of
didn't
the
even
Living
give
Dead
me a chance
definitely.
to say spoiler alert, like fast enough.
I said it for a second before
Yeah,
it.
I guess we. I guess
You
we
can
did.
edit in there later on. It's fine.
No, we're gonna keep it. It's fine. All right. So that was the like. It's funny because it's since 1930s. It kind of takes a break. This whole idea, like we now know of the term zombie from this movie in the 30s, but then it really, really becomes a pop cultural phenomenon in 1968 with Romero's Night of the Living Dead, and that's when things start to really take off. Where it brings us more to today. All right. So
Yeah, when in
let's.
the '80s they become
Yeah.
big, right? And then really, yeah, then it really starts taking off. I don't know. I would say you can take off when you talk about like cartoons are using zombies all the time. Look at Scooby Doo, right?
Scooby Doo,
Like,
yeah, that's actually a scary Scooby Doo movie. For a
I
Scooby
think
Doo
they're
movie,
making a
for real.
sequel to it too. That the Zombie
I
Island
just saw
one. I
that.
think that's what
Yeah,
they're
that was
doing
like
that.
actually freaky. Like I was watching it with my kids years ago. The first one came out, and they're like, "This is actually scary." Like Scooby Doo's never scary, but I guess for them it was. But yeah, late 70s, it becomes a big thing again. Because that Dawn of the
Again,
Dead,
it's all these Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead. It's all these zombie spin-offs. You can just
yeah.
talk about like there's this constant ones. A lot of them have to deal with, and they're dealing with the times too. Like the ones in the '80s are like radiation. Or radiation is causing it, right? Like the radiation leak from this plant is turning people into zombies, and this is doing this toxic waste that's turning people into zombies. So you're seeing a lot of that.
Well, that's also where the idea of an apocalypse comes from,
Yeah,
because the zombie apocalypse is basically about a breakdown of society, right? So
yeah.
there's so much symbolism here that, and it like that's why they say it also stems from post-apocalyptic, like post 1945 drop an atomic weapon, is that it's possible that there's going to be some form of an apocalypse, a complete breakdown of society, and zombies kind of take on that role, like it's a zombie outbreak. It spreads super quickly, so it might as well be. It's really attributed to viruses, bacteria. You know what I mean? This phenomena that could reduce mental capacity of humans. That's basically what the zombie apocalypse is, not reimagining or imagining, but kind of alluding to, I guess.
Well, it's just and just to give you like a background. I think the one that kind of really there's a whole bunch of stuff about it, but the one that really kind of put a lot of zombie stuff and made it more like almost like factual, right? That presented as fact, even though it's tongue in cheek, was a Max Brooks's. If you ever read it, the zombie survival guide.
That was the
Max
first one,
Brooks, right?
and then the second one is
Yeah.
the
Well, World
World
War
War Z.
Z, which
Yeah,
becomes, which I don't know if you ever read, is a great book. So,
I
and
own
if you
it.
read
I never
it,
read it. Yeah.
if you read it, it really does like it's based on journals and stuff, and it kind of sets up, and it's very. It took place before, it takes. I forget where it takes place in, but like a post war United States, if we get out of a war, and they call it a bushfire war. It's when the United States first has an African American president. This was all written before Obama, before the war ended in Afghanistan and stuff like that. So it's really interesting how it reads in, a virus spreading from China. Oh, okay, right? But
Wow, interesting.
and then it kind of spreads like around the world and stuff like that, and everything breaks down. But it's an interesting read. But the zombie survival guide before that kind of presents everything zombies, but in real life. And actually, something that if you go to the CDC today, they actually have
Okay, that's
a
awesome. I was gonna get to that. Yeah.
preparedness for a zombie apocalypse. And one reason they did that is because of the success of like the Zombie Survival Guide, World War Z, which was made into a movie starring Brad Pitt, which is very different it's different from the book in a lot of ways. But they could basically, they explain what to do if there is a zombie apocalypse. So this got a lot of people say, "Oh, zombies real." It's basically they
Yeah,
put it out there
pause for a
because
second. Let's just reiterate this. The
yeah,
CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and
yeah,
Prevention, literally has a webpage how to prepare. Like it's basically zombie preparedness 101. Like CDC has this. Just okay,
yes.
continue. Because I just needed to like
Well,
make
it's
sure we had that.
basically there because if you can survive a zombie apocalypse, you would need the same things that you would survive if there was like a hurricane, things of that
Exactly.
nature. So, but you would have like, make sure you have this, make sure you have, batteries and
Yeah,
lanterns
it's
and stuff
water.
like that.
It's literally there's like better safe
Yeah.
than sorry. Zombie apocalypse, and I'm on the CDC website right now. By the way, um, you need to have a kit, emergency kit, water, one
Yeah.
gallon per person per day, food, stock up on non-perishable items, medication, tools and supplies, sanitation, hygiene, household bleach, soap, towels, change of clothes for each family member, and blankets. Like this is for zombie apocalypse, but really, like you said, this is CDC's version of not making this more
Well,
fun. But
no,
I guess right.
they're taking on this. They're basically saying, right, people. There are groups out there called the Zombie Preparation Foundation, all these different things where they actually come together and meet up, and they're more or less like first aid responders and stuff like that. But they're into zombieism,
Yeah,
zombie lore, and they just kind of do their thing with that. But if you're prepared for that, if you're prepared for a zombie apocalypse, you're prepared for everything.
exactly. I mean,
That's basically
right.
how it
CDC says
works.
plenty of evacuation route. When zombies are hungry, they won't stop until they get food, brains, which means you need to get out of town fast. Plan where you would go and multiple routes you might take. Like, I'm CDC. It's kind of cool. And if zombies did start roaming the streets, CDC would conduct an investigation, much like any other disease outbreak. CDC would provide technical assistance to cities, states, and international partners dealing with this zombie infestation. But if like the first comment, just funny on preparedness 101 zombie apocalypse when you're on CDC website, someone says, I might suggest adding a baseball bat, preferably aluminum baseball bat, to your emergency kit as well. I think that has a lot to do with pop culture and obviously Walking Dead. But it's
Yes,
crazy that
which we
CDC
get
has
to.
this. I think this is crazy.
Well, again, they're going to think, hey, if people are going to want to get prepared for it, get prepared for a zombie apocalypse, they'll be prepared for everything. But again, the zombie survival guide also has all that stuff and explains a whole bunch of scenarios and what to do and things like that with zombies and stuff. And because
Nuts.
it presents as science, so like basically a zombie is a decomposing corpse, right? If you're doing
Yep.
like the Western version of it. So every time you move, what are you doing? You're tearing muscles, right? And stuff like that. That explains like the zombie like walk and stuff like that because it's
Yep.
a rotting corpse. So as they're moving, they're tearing muscles and the ligaments. They're no longer alive. They're not healing. And that's how they rot and stuff like that over time. It's the same thing from Walking Dead. If you've been watching the show, you see the zombies that return early on in the show. They're like falling apart basically. They can't move anymore. Whereas the fresher zombies are the ones you really have to like watch out for. There's like
Yeah.
different ones they have to become. And actually in Walking Dead, zombies are like the third most thing you have to worry about now. There's like everything else you have to worry about. Like other
Yeah.
people are the bigger threats, but
And I think that's kind of the thing when
it's a
like
show.
society dissolves itself, like that's also symbolism. You know what I mean? Like we become
Yeah,
animalistic. One thing, like kind of before we touch upon that stuff, is we forgot to mention the fact that zombies came back to pop culture because they kind of died down a little bit in the '80s, like late '80s. But really, it's the video games, and
yeah,
specifically one video game that kind of resurfaces the idea of zombies in pop culture, and that is in 1996, Resident Evil. Right by Capcom. I mean, I remember playing that game. First of all, I remember going to Barnes Noble. Jesus, I remember going to Blockbuster, and I don't know if you remember this when you could rent systems
yeah,
for the
yeah. I know.
weekend. Like PS1, we didn't have PS1. We had it was Sega Genesis. So I remember my brother and I went and we rented a PS1, and it came in this big suitcase. And we walked over to Blockbuster. We rented it. We brought it home. We connected it. This was great. And we got Resident Evil. And my parents went out somewhere that day with somebody. It was the nighttime, and my brother was, I guess, watching me, and we were playing Resident Evil. I was so freaked out. I was young, but not that young, but young enough. And I mean, I was like, this game is super scary. And now
That would
you look
freak you
at
out
it.
now too.
Yeah, I know. Like now they remade it, like same premise, same story, just like update it. But it's like it didn't age so well. But it was a freaky game. And then also Sega's House of the Dead, which sometimes you see when you go to arcades. For those of you that still
Yeah,
go to
that's kind of
arcades,
remade. Yeah, but and again, and that this caught on because people like the idea of just hey, these are the zombies, and it's like an endless horde. Like a zombie isn't like Dracula. Like there's no like named zombies. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like it's just the whole thing about a zombie. It's one zombie you're fine with if you know what to
yeah,
do, right? Destroy the
yeah,
brain. Yeah, there you go. You're good. It's not. It's an endless horde. It's unstoppable. That's what it is. It's like the virus. It's just
yeah.
these zombies. Their only thing is just to consume flesh.
Yeah.
That's all they're looking to do.
And
So
and for video game people out there, Tom, have you ever played The Last of Us?
I know of it. I never played it.
What a
No.
great game! I mean, that game was awesome. I literally got to like the very end of the game. It was on PS. I like dusted off my PS3 like a year ago, and I played it. I got to the almost very end, and then my PS3 crashed and erased everything.
That's not fun.
Which
What's
is
the one I
why
did play a while ago? But it was Dead Rising. I think
I never
that's one
played
where
it.
you're like a photographer,
Yeah, because you have
a
Silent Hill, Dead
journalist.
Rising, Dead
Yeah, Dead
Island,
Rising. I never
Left 4
played.
Dead, Dying Light. Like, there's so many zombie-esque games. I feel like that's really kind of driving that forward with the younger
And doesn't
generation
Call
as
of
well.
Duty has like a zombie level and stuff like that?
Yes,
I know
and
that
same
became a
thing
big thing.
with Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption. I mean, I'm playing the second one, but the
Oh
first one
yeah,
there's like a
they have
zombie.
yeah, there's like a zombie version,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah, and there's been a lot of movies when they incorporate zombies in. I think probably the most famous or like book, and it became a movie too, I believe, was what Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies.
Yes.
They took Jane Austen's novel and just threw in zombies into it.
Yeah, that's what subgenre now. And same thing with
Yeah,
Abe Lincoln,
like vampire.
Vampire
Yeah, I think
Hunter.
it's yeah. So they just I think there's also a couple other ones. What was it like? Something in Sea Monsters. I forget what it was, but like the idea of you're taking these classic stories and just combining them with this horror lore and see where it goes from there.
Okay. You got anything else about any fun facts about zombies?
Well, the one I wanted to talk about was what some of these like official, I'm not official, but they're known as zombie attacks, or some people talk about them as zombie attacks. And I'm sure
Okay.
one of the most famous ones was on May 26, 2012. I remember this, my students were talking about this because 2012 was also when like, the world was supposed to end. There was all those like people talking about zombie things and everything. And I remember my students were like, oh man, this the zombies are real. Did you see this story and stuff like that? So it actually happened in Florida, in Miami. And the whole thing was filmed. It was an 18-minute encounter with this man by the name of Rudy Eugene, and he attacked and maimed Ronald Popo, and he basically attacked this guy on May 26, 2012. And before this, Eugene was naked, right? And he
Yeah.
attacked him and actually started biting his face. You remember hearing about this?
Mm-mm.
He actually he ate the guy like about a quarter of the guy's face off, like his eye and everything like that. And the cop and a cyclist was riding by, saw what was going on, like, oh my god, call the cops. The cops come. They actually shoot Rudy. They shoot him several times. He looks up and growls at them and continues to bite on the guy's face. And then the cops
What?
fire a few more times and then actually do this. But yeah, the guy was Popo lost his eyebrows, his nose, part of his forehead, and his cheek and his left eye, and was left totally blind due to all the damage he had from his remaining eye. So,
Ooh.
yeah, he was like really messed up after this, obviously. And basically, the guy who attacked him was probably on bath salts. That's what they think he was on.
Oh. Okay.
But people are like, no, that was it's a zombie apocalypse, and he was the beginning of it, and it's being squashed by the government because of what happened. But
Wow.
yeah, it was one of those things. There's a few other things of that too that were coming out during that time, but I thought that was like it was it's classified under a cannibalistic attack, but it actually was. People say no, this was a zombie attack. The guy was a zombie.
We'll talk about attacks. There's a law in Haiti that actually makes it a criminal offense to turn someone into a
Yeah, I saw
zombie.
that. To
Yeah, it's
practice
like
zombie
Article
attacks on them. Yeah.
249. It dictates that if someone drugs another person, right, and then buries them as though they were dead, and then digs the person up and then brings them back to life, or at least attempts to, it is still considered murder, even if they do bring them back to life. As long as you bury a person, that's kind of crazy.
Well, that's this. If there's a zombie apocalypse, where would you go?
Me,
Where do you think
uh,
would be like the best place?
basement and cry. No, I don't. I got
I
nothing.
never
What do
in
you
the
got? I
house.
mean, see, I
Well,
didn't
I think
read
if you
those
can go,
books you read.
oh
I
yeah,
don't
well, the
know.
books, yeah, the books say well, they said the safest place would be like an island, so like Australia would be a good bet. If you can just go in the
Oh,
middle of Australia, you have to be able to survive there. But yeah, well, you have a two-story house, so you'd be okay. Just a short staircase, hang out upstairs. As long as you had protection, you'd be all right.
Did you know that? I didn't know this. I don't know how do I. I mean, obviously, I probably know it in a couple weeks, but World Zombie Day takes place around the globe on October
October
8th.
8th. Yeah,
I
October
didn't
8th.
know
Yeah.
that.
There's always have. I know my school always had. Well, they used to always have when like they had a zombie run, like a zombie 5K, whatever it was.
Hmm.
You would dress up as zombies, and other people would dress up as zombies, and you would just basically run. And as you're running away from zombies, you always have that. It's also used as a as protest too. A lot of times, people would dress up as zombies and like lay out in front of like tobacco companies and stuff like that to say, listen, you're turning people into zombies. Your product is killing people, turn them into zombies because they become addicted to the product and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Good to know. There's something I read about, like, I think it was like a fungus or something that could potentially turn ants into zombies.
Yeah, what it is yeah, it affects their brain and then it has them eat a certain plant. And
Yes.
then from there it'll go. There's actually another one with what was it? It's this type of virus, or I guess whatever fungus, whatever you want to call it, a virus, I believe. And it's inside of it goes into rats, excuse me, but it makes the rats um get how can I say this nicely? Very excited around cat urine.
What? Wait, okay.
So that,
This fungus attacks rats, which makes them excited by cat urine.
because it wants to get into, because the fungus itself wants to get into, but
Yeah.
what it does is basically it makes the rats attracted to cats, and the cats then eat the rats, and then the fungus gets inside of rats, gets inside of cats. That's basically what it wants to be. Where it wants to
That
live.
is so convoluted.
So it makes but our point is, it's one of these things. So it makes the rats then go after cats. Be attracted to cat urine, so they're going after cats, which is basically going to get them eaten and killed, which then allows the fungus to then get into the cats where it wants to go, because it wants to live in the cat's stomach.
Okay. That's nuts, dude.
Crazy, right? But it's the point. So there are some scientists I was reading too that said a zombie apocalypse is theoretically possible. But again, I don't know how much it is. It could just be that they probably want it. And there's a lot of people. I think they did a poll. This was also years ago, and there were people actually polled, and they were like, "Listen, there was a large number of Americans actually were rooting for a zombie apocalypse to happen, just so they could see how they would react in it."
Oh God.
Which I don't think no one really wanted. If you actually watch these movies, you don't want it. But there's they want to be going down roller skates down a hill with a blade, just chopping heads off. It's not quite how it would work, but that's
nonetheless. Yeah.
They get excited about it.
All right. Well, I guess that was a nice introduction to zombies. Thank you everyone for tuning in once more. If you need to find us, you could find us at historyteacherstalkingpodcast.com. Please feel free to email us. You can always find us on Facebook and other social media as well. With that in mind, I hope everyone has an awesome week, and we'll see you guys next week. Enjoy.
Watch out for zombies.
Later, Tom. I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.